Well, the Trump administration is dealing with two major hurricanes, the approaching Irma and the aftermath of Harvey.
Occidental College professor Caroline Heldman is here with us this morning. And good morning to you, Professor. Thank you so much for being here.
It's wonderful to be here.
A lot to talk about.
Yes.
You know, President Trump had what many are calling a success or a victory this week by getting the Harvey relief bill passed. He worked with Democrats to do this. How did he manage to do that?
Another head scratcher from the Trump administration, but he is getting a lot of positive press for this. He went into the Oval Office with Republican leadership and Democratic leadership and came out having sided with the Democrats on this. He allowed them to tie Hurricane Harvey relief funds to raising the debt ceiling, and he went with the Democratic plan. And so a lot of people on the Republican side were very critical of that. But at the end of the day, Trump is sending a message to his Republican leadership. It's unclear whether he's upset that they didn't repeal Obamacare, but he wants them to put out a tax plan, and he's letting them know that he will work with the Democrats if they're not willing or able to get things passed through the House and the Senate, both of which they control.
But do you think cutting a deal will hurt his chances to pass other legislation, or will Democrats actually be more willing to play ball to the point where the president doesn't need the most conservative Republicans anymore?
Well, you know, if he's going to cut a deal that Democrats like, as he did in this particular instance, it is very clear that this will improve his odds for cutting deals with Democrats in the future. He's a wild card, right? He's essentially saying, you don't know who I'm going to side with, but you need to pass my legislation, right? So he's essentially thrown his party leadership under the bus in order to get something through for his base. And I think that we will probably see some of this kind of wild card legislating or negotiating moving forward.
Now, the news, of course, has been dominated for the past week by Hurricane Harvey. We saw President Trump and the First Lady there. President Bush took a lot of heat for not going into Katrina right away. How do you think Trump's handling of this disaster has affected his image with people?
Well, I think that this is really the first point in his presidency where we're starting to see him shine, if you will. He has done everything he needs to do. He's had a few gaffes on the ground, right? He talked about how some of the evacuees were very happy. He talked about crowd size, but he went on the ground twice. So he didn't make the same mistakes that Bush made. He didn't wait a week for FEMA to get there. He didn't do a flyover. They didn't, you know, President Bush, they needed to, his staff gave him a DVD showing him the suffering many days after people were stranded on the rooftops. So it appears that Donald Trump has learned lessons from that. I would say he's doing an exceptionally good job of responding, and especially responding quickly with the funding. The possibility that Irma will need a lot of funding in Florida and in our territories, and also funding for Harvey. He's making that happen immediately, and I expect that we'll see a bounce in his opinion polls as a result of that.
And Donald Trump Jr. testified before Congress this week. It was overshadowed by all of the hurricane coverage. Give us an idea of what really the high points were on this one.
So we're not sure exactly what was discussed, but we do know that they are looking into the same things that the Mueller investigation is looking into, and that is potential collusion with the Russians. So they want to know why that meeting happened. And the other is the Comey firing and information about whether or not there was obstruction of justice from the president. On the meeting with the Russians, he has now given another reason. He says he's testing the fitness of the office for Clinton. And this is his fourth reason now for that meeting. So his reasoning keeps changing. So I don't think that helped him this week. And in terms of what is happening with the potential obstruction of justice, there's actually now a new memo circulating that was circulating in the White House at the time they were making the decision, and Trump's attorney actually put that some passages were problematic. So this could be the smoking gun. Mueller and Congress, the various committees in Congress, are going to need to bring in the president's attorney to see whether or not he wrote problematic because he was warning the president that it was an obstruction, or maybe he just didn't like the grammar. It's unclear.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Professor Caroline Heldman from Occidental, thank you so much. We appreciate your time as always.
Thank you.